When Jacqueline Lee Bouvier came into the world on July 28, 1929, she was an instant VIP in New York's high society. Her father, the dashing and notoriously self-destructive John Blackjack Bouvier III, was a Wall Street stockbroker with a taste for gambling and a proven weakness for women. Her mother, Janet Norton Lee, was a socialite who adored the prestige of an upper-crust life. From the outside, it was all glamour, wealth, and cocktails at sunset. Under the surface, the family dynamic was riddled with tension. Jackie's parents were headed toward a notorious divorce, and Black Jack indulged in one affair too many. By the time Jackie was old enough to form her first memories, the Bouvier household was on the brink of collapse. Still, the Bouvier cultivated a carefully curated image of refinement. Jackie and her younger sister Lee often posed for pictures that made them look like the perfect siblings, but the truth was more complicated. Their father openly favored Jackie, calling her the most beautiful daughter a man ever had, and that left Lee in a perpetual state of second-place frustration. Meanwhile, the girls watched as their parents' marriage slowly imploded, culminating in a scandalous divorce in 1936 that fed the tabloids for weeks. Rumor had it that Janet Bouvier, facing the near impossibility of dissolving a marriage in the 1930s, went so far as to hire a gorgeous Scandinavian woman to seduce Blackjack and secure evidence of his infidelity, one final push to get her divorce through the courts. In time, Janet remarried a wealthy lawyer, and Jackie, at the tender age of 11, seethed at her mother's quick rebound and refused to attend the wedding. That pretty much set the tone for her relationship with her mother for the rest of her life. To cope with her fragmented family, Jackie threw herself into reading novels and riding horses. If you're picturing that classic image of the quiet horse girl, a little aloof and thoroughly fixated on her steed, that was Jackie in a nutshell. She liked the order and freedom of horseback riding. She'd get out there on the track and show serious skill, even entering some competitions. But she rarely let her guard down in social situations. She was never the effortlessly gregarious type, at least not deep inside. Jackie was a master at playing the part expected of her, a skill that would serve her well once she was part of the world's most scrutinized political family. After graduating from finishing schools in her late teens, where she famously lied about her credentials, once claiming the B on her transcript meant a bachelor's degree and telling people she had done postgraduate work at the Sorbonne in Paris, Jackie returned to the States and took a job at Vogue. She'd beaten out more than 1,000 applicants for the position, a sign of how much promise she showed in fashion journalism. Yet on her very first day, she abruptly quit. Depending on who's telling the story, the editor warned her that working at Vogue might reduce her chances in the marriage market, or Jackie herself simply lost interest. Whichever version is true, the outcome was the same. She decided she'd rather spend her early 20s searching for a suitable husband. She almost married a Wall Street banker named John Husted when she was 22. For 3 months they were engaged, until Jackie abruptly ended it with the brutally dismissive remark that Husted was immature and boring. If she was going to marry, she wanted a partner who was neither. It wouldn't be long before she encountered a man who was the polar opposite of dull, John Fitzgerald Kennedy. Even so, it wasn't love at first sight. Jackie and JFK moved in the same circles for years, crossing paths here and there, but it took multiple introductions before any sparks flew. In one diary entry, Jackie even wrote about him with a certain level of scorn, calling him funny-bodied, skinny with toothpick legs. Hardly the reverential tone we might expect for the man who would become both her husband and the 35th President of the United States. Despite that less than romantic start, Jackie and JFK ultimately realized they shared a taste for reading, writing, travel, and Catholicism. JFK proposed in 1952. Jackie took an entire month to say yes, partly because she had a busy schedule and he was in the midst of a Senate campaign, and partly because Joe Kennedy, JFK's famously controlling father, was pushing for the marriage for political reasons. Joe recognized that if his son wanted to rise to the highest office in the land, he needed the right kind of wife, well-educated, polished, from a respectable Catholic family. Jackie fit the role perfectly, so the wedding date was set for September 12, 1953 in Newport, Rhode Island. 700 guests packed the church, and another 1,200 joined them at the reception that followed. It was an opulent, star-studded event. Jackie wore a legendary gown that still sits in the Kennedy Library, meticulously preserved. By the time the newlyweds settled into life together, Jackie discovered that JFK wasn't merely charismatic, he was also a notorious philanderer, carrying on multiple affairs. Although this might have been excruciating for a naive young bride, Jackie was not naive. She'd grown up watching her own father cheat on her mother repeatedly. In the social circles of the upper rank, as she called it, a man's extramarital affairs were often taken for granted so long as he came home to his wife. That said, Jackie wasn't thrilled about it, and at least a couple of times she seriously considered divorce. Indeed, one biography suggests that her father-in-law, Joe Kennedy, offered Jackie $1 million if she would tolerate JFK's indiscretions, and another $20 million if he gave her any unsavory diseases. The story might be apocryphal, but given the Kennedys' wealth and Joe's determination to keep the family name intact, it's hardly unimaginable. On top of that, Jackie faced more heartbreak in her personal life. She got pregnant 5 times, but only 2 of her children survived infancy, Caroline and John F. Kennedy, Jr. She miscarried in 1955, then gave birth to a stillborn daughter in 1956, whom she intended to name Arabella. Her husband's reaction at that time was galling. While Jackie lay in the hospital, devastated, JFK was on a yacht in the Mediterranean, enjoying the company of another woman. That was one of the few incidents that nearly drove Jackie to leave him. However, family pressures and her own belief in her role as a supportive wife kept her in the marriage. The couple went on to welcome Caroline in 1957, soon after which their family's pictures appeared in Life magazine, depicting a false sense of contentment that overshadowed their silent tensions. JFK's political ambitions only grew, and he needed Jackie by his side in public. The effect was remarkable. Whenever Jackie showed up at campaign events, attendance doubled. She had a refined poise and style that people flocked to. Officially, Jackie was shy and no big fan of the limelight, but she could turn on the glamour when needed. In 1959, with JFK eyeing the White House, Jackie was given a quiet role shaping his image. She advised him on wardrobe, apparently telling him no more boxy suits, though the rumor might be apocryphal, and penned a syndicated column called Campaign Wife, showing the behind-the-scenes life of JFK's spouse. By 1960, she was pregnant again, so while JFK crisscrossed the nation, she stayed in Georgetown, carefully avoiding any strain that might threaten her pregnancy. Meanwhile, JFK was, as usual, never short on female company. Some rumored flings included a woman tied to the mob and a pair of White House secretaries nicknamed Fiddle and Faddle. Jackie seemed to accept it as part of the bargain, though the tabloids never caught on to the depths of these shenanigans. Eventually, the campaign came to a close, and on November 8, 1960, John F. Kennedy became president. Jackie became First Lady at age 31, a breath of fresh style and youthful sophistication in the White House, though behind the scenes she was dealing with all the old heartbreak. Just a couple of weeks after the election, she gave birth to John F. Kennedy, Jr. The baby arrived 3 weeks premature, nearly not breathing at first. Doctors had to blow air into his lungs to get him started. Jackie was exhausted. The next 2 weeks in the hospital were crucial for both mother and infant to regain strength. Then, once she recovered, she dove into her new role. She had a dedicated press secretary, Pamela Turner, so she could control her public image. She gave limited access to reporters and almost no access to her children, hoping to keep Caroline and John Jr. out of the limelight. It worked to an extent. Jackie's popularity soared. JFK once joked that he was the man who accompanied Jacqueline Kennedy to Paris, alluding to how enthralled people were by her fashion sense and manner. Yet no amount of grace could hide the friction in the marriage. Jackie famously introduced one of JFK's secretaries to a French reporter as the girl who is supposedly sleeping with my husband, a pointed remark that confirmed how openly she was aware of his cheating. Meanwhile, both she and JFK occasionally took vitamin shots from the infamous Dr. Max Jacobson, nicknamed Dr. Feelgood, which often contained amphetamine cocktails. It was an odd time, driven by the stress of political life and the Kennedys' perpetual quest to keep up appearances. Jackie's sense of style, too, sometimes stirred controversy. Her penchant for French couture alienated ordinary Americans who couldn't afford such clothing. She tried to pivot to more American brands, but her devotion to European fashion houses, particularly Chanel, remained. Nonetheless, she spearheaded a project to restore the White House, turning it into a museum of American history and style. Something she'd dreamed about since her childhood visit left her disappointed by how little historical context was offered. In 1962, she gave a televised tour of the newly refurbished White House, for which she won a special Emmy. To this day, she is the only First Lady to receive such an award. Through it all, heartbreak continued. In August 1963, Jackie gave birth prematurely to a baby boy, Patrick Bouvier Kennedy, who lived only 39 hours. The tragedy shook her to the core. Grief-stricken, she accepted an invitation from her friend Aristotle Onassis to recuperate on his private yacht. The public and even JFK's own circle found this scandalous, but the president ultimately allowed her to go, believing she needed the break. Then just 3 months later came November 22, 1963, a day forever etched in American memory. Jackie was with JFK in a motorcade in Dallas when she heard gunshots. Startled, she saw the governor of Texas scream, and only then did she realize what was happening. JFK was shot fatally in the head. In her shock, Jackie climbed onto the trunk of the convertible, apparently to retrieve a piece of his shattered skull. Secret Service agent Clint Hill quickly intervened, pushing her back into the seat. Later, Jackie claimed she had no memory of climbing onto the trunk, though photographs made it chillingly clear. In the aftermath, Jackie was asked to remain in her blood-stained pink Chanel suit for the swearing-in of Lyndon B. Johnson aboard Air Force One. She famously replied, "I want them to see what they have done to Jack." The entire country was stunned by her stoic dignity. But privately, she was tormented. She wrote letters to a priest, confessing she felt so bitter against God that she toyed with the notion of taking her own life and asked if that would bar her from reuniting with JFK in the afterlife. Her mother told her, "It's been 8 months. You have to snap out of it," which only highlighted how poorly the Bouvier family handled grief. Jackie found herself leaning on the memory of her father for strength, or perhaps channeling that old stoicism that had served her since childhood. Jackie's private anguish took many forms, including a rumored affair with the architect who designed JFK's tomb in Arlington, Jack Warnack. She also traveled with David Ormsby Gore, a diplomat who had lost his wife in a car accident, sparking more whispers. Some speculate he proposed marriage. In any case, Jackie ultimately said no, and not too long after, she shockingly married Aristotle Onassis, the wealthy Greek shipping tycoon who had once dated her sister Lee. To say that this wedding caused a scandal would be an understatement. The Catholic Church disapproved of a divorced man marrying a devout Catholic widow. The Kennedys disliked Onassis, regarding him as a pirate, and her own sister felt betrayed, lamenting, "How could she do this to me?" The press printed snarky headlines like, "Jackie, how could you?" But Jackie had her reasons. After Robert Kennedy was assassinated in 1968, Jackie was convinced that a Kennedy curse targeted the entire family, and she feared for her children's safety. Onassis offered financial might, security, and a place far from the U.S. spotlight. That might have been enough to tip the scales. Her marriage to Onassis was essentially a transaction. They slept in separate bedrooms, had a pre-nuptial agreement that gave Jackie a hefty allowance for clothes and personal expenses, and rarely spent quality time together. Onassis flaunted an affair with opera singer Maria Callas, and he undermined Jackie by going so far as to have paparazzi snap nude photos of his wife sunbathing, which later ended up in a men's magazine, an enormous humiliation for someone so image-conscious. Meanwhile, Onassis's adult daughter, Christina, believed Jackie brought the Kennedy curse into the family. When Onassis's son died in a plane crash, Christina pinned the blame on Jackie. Onassis himself apparently started divorce proceedings, but he died of respiratory failure in 1975 before they could finalize anything. Once again, Jackie found herself widowed, now inheriting the complicated Onassis estate. Through formidable negotiation, she secured a $26 million settlement from her stepdaughter, Christina, which allowed Jackie to remain financially comfortable for the rest of her life. At that point, Jackie was in her mid-40s, wealthy, and free to do whatever she wished. She embarked on a career in publishing, first as an editor at Viking Press and later at Doubleday, immersing herself in the literary world she had always loved. She was hardly doing it for the paycheck. Her salary was a modest $200 a week at Viking, but it gave her a sense of purpose. She took to living in New York City, forging a quiet domestic partnership with Maurice Templesman, a Belgian-born diamond merchant who was separated from his wife but never officially divorced. Jackie and Maurice never married. They simply stayed together for the rest of her days, enjoying a contentment she had not found with either JFK or Onassis. Friends described them as a lovely older couple who often sat close, their heads bowed as they whispered to each other. Even in her 60s, Jackie still had sparks of that old magnetism. She once attended the opera with Alec Baldwin, who recalled feeling tongue-tied and flattered by her invitation. She was Jackie O, after all, one of the most recognizable women in the world. Yet life dealt her one more harsh blow. In early 1993, doctors discovered a lump that turned out to be non-Hodgkin lymphoma. She fought the cancer with chemotherapy, Maurice always at her side, but it spread to her spinal cord, brain, and liver. Realizing the end was near, Jackie chose to discontinue hospital treatments and return to her Fifth Avenue apartment. On May 19, 1994, she passed away in her sleep at age 64. She remains one of the most popular first ladies in U.S. history, celebrated for revamping the White House, championing the arts, and elevating American culture on the world stage. She established what would become the National Endowment for the Arts and the National Endowment for the Humanities, though her dream of creating a Department of the Arts never came to fruition. Thanks to her, the White House is a carefully preserved, historically rich site that visitors can enjoy as a museum of the American presidency. She even won a special Emmy for her 1962 televised tour of the White House, forever securing her place in pop culture trivia. Yet Jackie's personal relationships were rarely serene. She endured her first husband's relentless infidelities, a second marriage that was more business deal than romance, and a fraught bond with her sister Lee. One rumor suggesting that Lee once had an affair with JFK himself, another that Jackie married Onassis partly to exact revenge on Lee. In the end, Jackie's life was a tapestry of extremes. She had all the wealth in the world, courtesy of her father, her marriages, and her own inheritance. She possessed an inimitable sense of style that women everywhere tried to emulate. She played a high-stakes game in politics, linking her image to John F. Kennedy's campaign and transforming the White House into a symbol of cultured modernity. At the same time, she lived through profound tragedies, miscarriages, stillbirths, the violent deaths of two Kennedys she cared about deeply, and a second husband who publicly humiliated her. She walked away from all of it with her chin held high, forging a new life in editorial work and forming a final loving bond with Maurice Templesman. Jackie left nothing to her sister Lee in her bequests, fueling speculation that the rift between them had never closed. As with many chapters in Jackie's life, the truth might be more nuanced. People close to her believed she still harbored resentment for Lee's rumored indiscretion with JFK. That alleged betrayal could have been the root cause of a wound that never healed, much like the sorrow Jackie carried for the lost pregnancies and the horrifying day in Dallas. Even now, Jackie O remains an icon who elicits awe and debate. Did she marry Onassis for love or for security? Did her father-in-law pay her to tolerate JFK's womanizing? Did she truly blame God for all her tragedies to the point of contemplating suicide? These questions linger because Jackie learned early on that self-preservation required secrecy. She offered the public only the side of herself she wanted them to see. The gracious, stylish hostess, the loving mother to Caroline and John Jr., the woman who stoically refused to remove her blood-stained suit on the day her husband was gunned down. She never fully let the world in on her deepest secrets, nor did she give them the meltdown they might have expected from a woman so publicly betrayed. "I want them to see what they have done to Jack," she once said, refusing to remove that blood-splattered Chanel suit. In that single moment, she took control of the world's gaze. Through fashion, through quiet dignity, through an unspoken but potent message, she shaped how we would remember not just the Kennedys, but an entire era of American life. And that, as much as any inheritance or marriage, was Jackie's greatest triumph, making sure that even the darkest chapters of her story became part of an enduring legend, a tapestry woven with style, tragedy, and steel-like resolve,